Well everyone, we're back in the sumo offseason, such as there is one, anxiously awaiting news of how everyone looks in practice, and finding out what new godforsaken injury woes they're suffering from now. Sometimes sumo fans need a little cheering up. That makes this a great time to visit the sponsor of this video, sumospiffy.com. Rock the adorable red stamped Sumo Kittens logo, or pick up some merch with the newest addition to the team, Terno Floofy. Look at those eyes that stare into the soul of his opponents, knowing what they'll do before they do. The eyes that stare into your soul. Look at him. He wants to love you. Bring him home.
I got you, friend.
Hold tight, I got your back.
Set and shield, you'll be alright.
1 second, we got this. Hold on, let me help you.
Once again, the Yokozuna showed his stuff and proved why he's the only man for the role. People have been wondering when he'll retire for 2 of the 3 years he's been at the rank, but why bother when you can take 6 months off, then walk into a tournament and stomp your opposition harder than Godzilla stomps Tokyo? Sure, he lost on days 14 and 15 for the 3rd time since his ascension, and only the fact he had a 2-win lead gave him a chance to see it through in the playoff. But what matters is if you win, and that's 6 titles in 8 full tournaments as Yokozuna for the big man. Kick up your feet and collect 6 more months of paychecks, King. I know that sounds sarcastic, but you've actually earned it. Is it too early to call Onosato a disappointment? Absolutely not. At the very least, this was an incredibly disappointing tournament. Sure, he had a 60% win rate at the 3rd highest rank in the sport, but that's what counts as disappointing when you win at least 11 matches per Basho for nearly a year straight. He has no business starting any tournament 1 in 3. Maybe I could understand if his opponents did a bunch of things he'd never seen, but getting the bulldozer treatment from Mitaki Yumi? You should have been working on that since a man 95 pounds lighter than you did it in May. Were you too busy with your victory parades, or did you think nobody noticed since you still won the U-Show? And when you finally remembered how to win, you got knocked off your roll by Gonoyama of all people. 1 bad tournament's not enough to be a definite fraud, and he may still be the best shot the sport has at a new Yokozuna before 2026. But the most physically imposing wrestler in sumo can't keep slapping the backs of heads like a dog trying to stay afloat every time he gets knocked back a couple of feet. Oh god, I hope he's not hurt too. Yes, our remaining Ozeki. Hey fellas, did you know that Ozeki means champion? I assumed you did, since you're both family to some of the sport's greats, but at the moment it seems like you might need a reminder. How is it possible for both of you to consistently be better than all but 2 or 3 people in the sport, but just as consistently lose at least 4 matches per tournament? 12 wins or more 1 time each? In your careers? For all the hype, you two should have been Sumo's version of the Chiefs and Niners by now. Instead, you're making it look like half the division is the Minnesota Vikings. That said, I don't want to be unfair. Quite a few sports these days have a lot of parity, so the fact a number of wrestlers have the ability to win against you isn't necessarily the problem. It's how hopeless it looks when you lose. Koto, what the hell is this? I know you hadn't fought him in a year, but don't you people have video? Trying to throw a man you've already proven you can just walk backwards out of the ring if you stand your ground? Even a grainy VHS tape would make it clear what to do. Incomprehensible. And how can Hoshoryu be the nephew of a recent Yokozuna, but look surprised that Gonoyama of all people hit him with his face? That's all the man does. Plus, between hurting his arm, missing the end of January, and skipping the last 3 days here because it was so hard to throw Kotozakura, are we looking at a 25-year-old man whose best physical days are already behind him? Takakeisho's going to lose his Ozeki rank for the first time in 5 years, but enough ink has been spilled over the injuries that brought him to this point. So let's give the man his due credit. He faced demotion with a neck that qualifies for permanent disability and still tried to headbutt his way into holding rank for a few more tournaments. It didn't work because it's too much for the battle hamster's body to take anymore, and that's a shame. If he'd managed to reach Yokozuna and was able to take 6 or 8 months off at a time, we might still see him winning tournaments because he'd be fighting instead of this shadow we've seen for the last year. Now he can't take even 1 tournament off or else he'll fall to the ass end of the division. Personally, I'd kind of like to see that. Even in this state, he could roll over the competition down there and keep making money off all the incentives he's earned in his career. But leaving the upper ranks might be the end. Pride is its own currency, and he might not want to spend it when he has enough yen to last a lifetime. He still has a chance to find 10 wins in September and regain his rank, but given the state of his body, I don't even know if I'm rooting for him to do it. They sure don't make the Man in Black like they used to. Anyone who paid attention knew his 10 wins in May was completely fraudulent, seeing as 2 of them were walkovers, but even I didn't expect him to crap out a 2-4 start. It took wins against 2 broken men, our favorite Pinky, and a predictable dumbass to turn it around, and even then he still had to somehow beat Koto Sakura for the 2nd straight tournament to squeak out an 8-7 record. His limitations have always shown when he gets into the Sanyaku, and a lot of people hate his sumo in part because of that. I kind of like it though. There's something pure about knowing everyone knows you're going to force choke the shit out of them, knowing they know that, and still rarely trying anything different. Of course, there's no way Darth Vader would take this many L's. If there's any sumo wrestler I'd love to see play in the NFL, it's Hirota Umi, specifically at fullback. At 5'10", you wouldn't even see him coming until you were already flat on your back. And you might say, why not make him a running back then? Absolutely not. Leave his hands free for more smash. He's learned how to take 400-pound men and drive them directly backwards from a dead stop. Imagine what he could do with a full head of steam. Alas, we'll have to keep watching him put on a show in sumo. The days of him pushing up against a big belly like a kid failing to prove something to his older brother are over. He's put on a little size, but still doesn't seem like he can get big enough for this style to get him much past where he is now. But he's healthy, and the way this sport's going, he might make Yokozuna just by outlasting the competition. You poor bastards. It's always tough at the top of the Maegashira ranks, having to fight the best guys when they're full of energy and get them warmed up for their matches against each other later in the tournament. It's even worse when all of them keep losing and getting replaced by a bunch of guys elevated way higher than they should be just because there's no one else to fill the spots. Even poor Ura ended up in this group once Papa Bear's pecs fell apart. It's a rotation of scrubs, has-beens, and for some reason Tobizaru, who mostly got his ass beat by the top guys but at least managed to win against everyone else. Give him a purple Mawashi and he would truly be the Minnesota Vikings of sumo. Some of them did well enough to stick around and soak up another beating in September, while the rest will drop far enough to probably have a much better result and get themselves back in this position for a November shellacking. Hard to say which group's getting the worst end of the deal. At least it'll be interesting to see if Atami Fuji can swing another 8-7 record and keep rotating between the exact same 3 positions on the Banzuke. My god, half these guys really are the Minnesota Vikings. Holy shit. Don't get me wrong, Takano Sho's always been a good wrestler. 3 Jun-Yu shows, 7 special prizes, it ain't nothing. But the only other time he swung 12 wins in this division, it didn't matter a lick, because it was early 2020 and the 2 Yokozuna were fighting for the title. Now he gets a chance against the current Yokozuna, a chance he wouldn't have gotten without Hoshoryu's injury, and the probable successor, and runs through both to force a playoff? I don't care how stoic these guys look, this is Broadway-level theater. If Teruno Fuji wasn't so hell-bent on winning his 10th title, maybe the happiest man in sumo would have taken it all the way. Alas, it's a 3rd near miss, but one hell of a story. If there's a downside, it's that maybe other guys start thinking they can do this on a torn ACL. Look at this man's legs, he can squat a dump truck. Everyone else, go get your knee fixed. Without question, my favorite moment of this tournament was Ryuden getting the Tawara shoved up his ass by a grumpy old man muttering damn kids who just wanted to get back to his rocking chair. The human dumpster fire had a Basho to match, staggering to the worst record of anyone who made it through all 15 days and barely hanging on to his spot in the division. He doesn't even look like he can compete at the mid-ranks anymore. It's a shame the bottom of Makauchi isn't much more than Juryo North at this point. He'll probably get 10 more wins in September and keep hanging around. But if the gods are kind and the losing continues, maybe someone will finally force him to abort his career. I've always had a special place in my heart for Nishikigi once I found out his name means well-dressed tree. That's the same title I had in my high school yearbook. Of course, it didn't feel great watching him make everyone else look like a lumberjack for the first half of the tournament, but deep down I guess he's like the Ents. Once he's ready, he'll stomp you flat, even if it takes him way too long to wake up. Given our personal connection, I don't want him to go anywhere, but someone find the Entwise before he falls asleep again. If you've watched poker on TV or YouTube, you've probably seen someone yelling, "What time?" It's the gambler's wish for a long shot to work out, just this once, usually followed by the lie that if they get this one, they'll never ask for it again. This happens in sumo as well. A wrestler has a tournament where everything goes just right, and even though you know, and they know, they'll never be consistently great, they have a magical 2 weeks that they'll remember forever. I'm pretty sure Chura Naomi used his one time in Nagoya. For 14 days, he only lost to guys who are considerably better than him. He even beat a guy who's definitely better than him. By the end, he didn't have a chance at a championship, but if he won on the last day, maybe he'd get a special prize worth a cool 13 grand. And then he lost to Kageyaki. Kageyaki! The possibility of thousands of dollars on the line and you lose to a man in a piss-colored mawashi? The sumo spirits have seen how you repaid their kindness, Chura. They will not forget this heresy. Can you please decide whether or not you're good at this sport? It will hopefully not come as a surprise to say sumo isn't like American team sports. There are no tank bowls in sumo, nothing to be gained from more losses except a trip down the rankings and closer to irrelevance. It's not like the wrestler who does the worst gets first pick of the cybernetic limbs to replace whatever's broken. But you might not realize it to watch these three guys when they're in the top division. Roga keeps hanging on to the same rank with a 7-8 record, but that's the best he's ever done. Bushozan never had more than 5 wins in 3 previous attempts. Do you know how hard it is to get to this level and then never win more than a third of your fights against the bottom of this division? The opponents down here are hardly better than in the Juryo division you just came from. Failing this hard is almost a skill unto itself. Kageyaki at least spent several years in Makuuchi, but his last winning record up here was in 2022. Whatever glory he had is less noticeable now than a whiff of yesterday's fart. This was the first time they'd all been in the top division together, so maybe it would be like a depressing weekend watching Netflix. One of them stumbles over just enough winners to make it worth the time. But all 3 of them? At the same time? It's unthinkable. How did this happen? What collapse in the logic of the universe had to occur for these 3 men? These 3, to not just finish with winning records, but for them all to have 8 wins with at least 1 day to go? What's next? The Pistons winning the NBA championship? I fully expect a regression from all of them in September, even if they don't collapse into the black hole of suck I predicted this time. And they damn well better return to form. If all of them score winning records again, all we need is a 4th horseman and it'll be sumo's apocalypse.
Bring out Jidin!
Unit lost.
Bring out Jidin!
Unit lost.
Bring out Jidin!
Unit lost.